A father named Muhammad is sick, he can't work, he has 3 children, can't leave the camp because kidnapping, trafficking, and violence waits for them just outside the fence. And as of today, the small amount of money he was receiving for food just got cut. $7 a month. That's what some of the world's most persecuted people are now being told they have to survive on, while the war the world helped create rages on, while diplomats argue over streets and ceasefire terms, and while a sitting US president walked into a Supreme Court this morning to watch arguments about who gets to be called American. The Strait of Hormuz, one of the most critical waterways on the planet, is essentially closed. Ship traffic collapsed 95% in a single month, and the ripple is already hitting your wallets, whether you feel it or not. And North Korea was hiding inside a software that runs over 80% of the internet cloud's environment for 3 hours. Most people had no idea. Stay with me, all of that and what it means to the rest of us right now. It's been 32 days since the US and Israel launched military operations against Iran, and what has started as a war being sold to the public with a 4 to 6 week timeline is now spilling into something far more complicated, with the Gulf nations on fire, Lebanon bleeding, and the global economy already feeling the rupture. Now, according to the human rights activist news agency, US-Israeli strikes have killed at least 1,572 civilians inside Iran, and from that, 236 are children. The Iranian Red Crescent poll shows much higher, reporting over 1,900 killed since operations began on February 28th. And the World Health Organization director confirmed this week that the strikes on Tehran came close enough to their offices to shatter its windows and issue a direct statement that the UN agency sites have clearly identified that the strikes' damages cannot be tolerated. Israeli missiles hit a major pharmaceutical company in Tehran, destroying raw material production units and its research and development division. Now, in Lebanon, more than 1,300 people have been killed in Israeli strikes since early March. Over 1 million people have been displaced. Lebanon's army is withdrawing from parts of the south as Israel announces plan to establish a buffer zone and destroy villages near the Israeli border. 10 European nations, along with the EU's foreign policy chief, issued a joint statement this week calling it for de-escalation, urging Israel to halt its ground operation. And now that call has not changed anything on the ground. And people are asking, is this still a targeted military operation, or has the definition of target quietly expanded? The WHO being struck near, pharmaceutical companies being bombed, villages being slanted for destruction. These are the questions circulating, and they deserve to be named on air because ordinary people are asking them and they aren't going away. One of the world's most critical waterways is effectively closed. Ship transit dropped from 130 per day in February to just 6 in March. That is a 95% collapse in a single month. The UN Conference on Trade and Development is now projecting global merchandise trade to fall from 4.7 last year down to somewhere between 1.5 and 2% this year. Now, this means higher prices, tighter supply chains, and slower economic growth, not just in the Asia, Middle East, but everywhere. President Trump says Iran has asked the US for ceasefire. Iran has denied it. And now he has been publicly floating the idea of pulling the United States out of NATO after key alliance member criticized the war and refused to help the policy to police the Strait of Hormuz. So it looks like a fracturing military alliance. American journalist Shelley Kittleson kidnapped in Baghdad this week, according to NPR. And US and Iraqi officials said she had been warned multiple times about threats against her before she was taken. Now, while the war is dominating headlines, there's a crisis unfolding in a place that most of the world has already forgotten about. And today, it got worse. Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh, home to more than 1.2 million Rohingya refugees, the largest refugee settlement in the world. Most of the people living there fled Myanmar in 2017 during the US government itself declared a genocide. Same military that carried out those attacks out through Myanmar's government in 2021 and remain in control of the country today. There is nowhere to go back to, and in Bangladesh, Rohingya are legally barred from working. They survive almost entirely on humanitarian aid, and as of today, April 1st, Under World Food Program new tiered distribution system, around 2/3 of the population will now receive less food assistance than before. Some, roughly 17%, will receive as little as $7 per month. The previous amount was 12, and even that residents had long described barely enough to survive. There's going to be an episode we're going to do this covering the one of the other largest camps, refugee camps in the world, Kenya Kakuma, about the tiered food distribution system. WFP says the changes ensures fairness and equality in distribution. Bangladesh own refugee relief commissioner described it differently, telling the Associated Press that with desperation already this high, people will attempt to flee. He warned directly that law and order will deteriorate. The father that I mentioned earlier, Mohammed Rahim, a father of 3 who is sick and cannot work, simply said, "Our children will suffer the most." Dozens of Rohingya staged protests this week holding signs that read, "Food is a right, not a choice." Now, on a related note, there is a small but significant development nearby worth flagging. According to AP, Pakistan and Afghanistan Taliban government have resumed ceasefire talks in China this week, with Beijing serving as a mediator. China has not publicly confirmed this role. These two nations have had tense and often violent relations throughout their shared border, and one step towards dialogue, even a quiet one, is worth watching. Now, crossing from humanitarian crisis to a digital one, because we are all focused on the Middle East, North Korea was in your devices. If you have never heard of Axios, not the news website, but the software tool, you probably still depend on it. It's a JavaScript library that developers use to make applications connect to the internet. Has been downloaded more than 100 million times a week. It is used in websites, apps, APIs, and thousands of other programs. According to the security researchers, it is presently roughly 80% of cloud and code environment globally. Monday night, North Korean hackers got inside of it. Google's threat intelligence group confirmed this week that the hacking collectively they track as UNCI 1069 linked to North Korea and active since 2018 compromised a developer's account that maintained Axios package for approximately 3 hours. The attackers put malicious update to anyone who downloaded the software during that window, injecting code capable of stealing credentials, accessing sensitive data, and giving them ongoing remote access to infected systems. The Google cybersecurity firm they anticipate that attackers will use the credentials they just obtained to target and steal cryptocurrency from enterprises. You might be wondering why crypto? Because according to experts and UN reports, roughly half of North Korea's missiles program has been funded by digital theft. Last year, North Korean hackers stole $1.5 billion in cryptocurrency in a single attack. At the same time, it was the largest crypto heist ever recorded to date. It looks like this is a sanctioned nation using cyber warfare to fund a weapons program. To wrap it all up, President Donald Trump walked into the United States Supreme Court, making history as the first sitting president to ever known to attend the oral argument at the nation's highest court. If I can take you back a little bit, when he came back in office the first day, he signed an executive order ending automatic birthright citizenship for children born in the U.S. to undocumented parents or parents on temporary visas. That order was immediately blocked by a federal judge who called it blatantly unconstitutional. It has been tied up in courts ever since. Now today, the justice heard the argument directly. The 14th Amendment to the Constitution reads, "All persons born or naturalized in the U.S. and subjects of a jurisdiction thereof are citizens," and so on and so forth. So the Trump administration position is that this interpretation has been wrong for over hundreds of years. They argue that subjects to jurisdiction therefore means only children born to parents who intended to live permanently in the U.S., what lawyers called domicile, should receive citizenship. Now, both liberal and conservative judges pushed back. Chief Justice John Roberts questioned how the administration could take narrow set of historical exceptions, children of ambassadors, enemies during, invasions, people of warships, and so on and so forth. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson asked the government lawyers whether the administrations were prepared to bring pregnant women in for dispositions to determine their domiciles. Now, the president left the room roughly around halfway through the arguments. After deporting, he posted on social media calling the United States the only country, paraphrasing here, stupid enough to allow birthright citizenship. We don't have all the answers yet, but it looks like we soon will. If this content matters to you, subscribe, drop a comment, share with someone who needs to stay informed. Your engagement keeps this channel going. I leave you all in the care of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Fi amanillah.